The wind pushed against the cracked window frame of my studio apartment like it wanted in. Boulder was frozen over, December unforgiving, and my radiator had long given up trying. I sat hunched in an old thrifted blanket, cup of instant coffee half empty and bitter, laptop open but ignored. Then, my phone buzzed. A voicemail. Thatcher Veldon. I hesitated. My grandfather hadn't called in months. Years, maybe. I hit play. "Do you like the house I bought you?" The words landed like a slap in a quiet room. "What house?" I stared at the screen, the message still playing as if I hadn't heard it the first time. My throat tightened. Had he meant to send that to someone else? No, he said my name at the end. "Hope it feels like home, Ira." I froze. Longing rose up first, warm and treacherous. The kind of longing that made you want to believe people change. Then came the skepticism. The ice that kept me sane. This wasn't a mistake. It was bait. The next morning, a package waited outside my door. Brown wrapping paper, a shiny red bow, pretending to be humble. No return address, but the handwriting was familiar, Marin Dane. I pulled the ribbon, heart thumping. Inside, a designer scarf. Price tag still attached, even though it was a gift. Something I could never afford, never would wear. The note read, "Still our little girl. Merry Christmas." My jaw clenched. Still. A flash from years ago struck hard, a Christmas dinner where Uncle Peter passed around his Rolexes to the nephews while I got a second-hand photo frame with the tag still on it. They'd laughed. I'd smiled. Ownership disguised as love. Nothing had changed. Clairette came by after work. She saw the scarf draped over the chair and frowned. "She's not subtle," Clairette muttered. "Trying to reel you back." I nodded, still staring at the note. "When's the last time your grandfather sent you anything?" she asked. "Not through Marin. Himself." I couldn't remember. That's what scared me. That night, while combing through job boards, I checked my email out of habit. Subject, transfer completed, Pacific Ridge property. I blinked. The message said the title was now under new ownership, listing me, Ira Veldon, as the former owner. Former? My pulse spiked. I reread it twice. Then 5 more times. I never bought a house. Never signed anything. Certainly not on a property in Pacific Ridge. I dove into my inbox history. Nothing. Not a whisper of any ownership, sale, transfer, just silence. "Claire!" I called. She sat beside me as I pulled up real estate databases. It took 20 minutes, but there it was, a listing for a house under my name, pulled offline weeks ago. "Someone used your identity," Clairette said softly. "Someone." "In my family?" I whispered. Clairette always carried her recorder. Part habit, part preparation for law school. She played me a clip she didn't mean to capture. Marin's voice, "Just make sure the transfer goes through. She doesn't need to know." Not yet. It hit me in the gut. They'd planned this. Used me like a name on paper. A pawn in some bigger scheme. Clairette looked at me, voice low. "If they hid this, what else have they hidden?" I couldn't answer. Not yet. But I nodded. Slowly. I needed more. Evidence. Truth. A reason. Because what they'd done wasn't just fraud. It was betrayal. I was 10 when Grandpa Thatcher sat with me in his study. Firelight reflected in the whiskey glass he always held. One day, he said, you'll have a place no one can take. Somewhere that's yours, no matter what they say. At the time, it was a fairy tale. A sweet line to soothe a girl crying because her parents had fought again and forgot to pick her up. But I remembered it. Every word. I clung to it in the nights I cried into loan paperwork, or when Mom reminded me I'd never understand the cost of success. Maybe that house was the place he meant. And maybe it was stolen before I ever got the key. I reopened the email. My name wasn't a mistake. It was proof. They did this behind his back, I said, the words trembling from somewhere deeper than rage. I grabbed my phone and dialed. Marin answered quickly, voice bright and fake, Ira. We were just talking about you. I didn't play polite. You sold a house. With my name on it. A pause. Then a dry laugh. Angel, you're reading too much into things. Click. I hung up and turned to Clairette. We're not letting this go. The sun hadn't fully risen when I parked my car on a quiet cul-de-sac in North Boulder. Snow crunched under the tires. Everything felt muted, like the world was holding its breath. The house stood at the end of the street. Beige brick, arched windows, a porch strung with polite Christmas lights. Smoke curled from the chimney. It wasn't abandoned. I sat still, fingers locked on the steering wheel. My heart thudded louder than the wind outside. This wasn't mine. This wasn't supposed to be mine. Yet there it stood, like a memory that someone else was living. I walked up the driveway, boots leaving hesitant impressions. I knocked. The door opened within seconds. A woman in her 40s stood in a festive sweater, hair pinned back, eyes friendly but wary. Yes? Can I help you? I swallowed. I was just wondering about this house. I saw a listing once. Is it still available? She smiled politely. We bought this place a few months ago. From a man named Callum Dane. Is something wrong? Callum. The name landed like ice in my throat. I shook my head quickly. No. Just confused. Sorry to bother you. I turned and walked away, barely making it to the car before the breath left my lungs. It wasn't just a clerical error. They sold it. He sold it. Using my name. Back at Clairette's apartment, I sat curled on the couch while she clicked away on her laptop. She chewed her lip, eyes sharp with concentration. There, she said, spinning the screen toward me. The house had been listed on a private real estate site, live for only 45 minutes. Enough time to fake visibility, then pull it before any real eyes could catch it. She dove deeper, fingers dancing across the keyboard. Found the IP that posted it. It's linked to Soren Dane's architecture firm. My stomach turned. That's Callum's brother. She nodded. This gets worse. The sale was signed electronically using your name and a forged digital signature. Hidden well, but not well enough. I stared. That's felony level, Clairette finished. Straight up fraud. I shook my head, rage burning through confusion. How far are they willing to go? Clairette didn't answer. She didn't need to. That night, I was brushing my teeth when my laptop pinged. No sender. No subject. Just one line. Stop now. You're not ready for what they've done. My hand froze. Water dripped from the sink. I showed it to Clairette. You need to report this, she said. Anonymous threats? This is serious. But something about the message made me pause. A memory surfaced, Callum, years ago, warning me over a glass of wine, some things are best left alone, Ira. At the time, it felt paternal. Protective. Now it felt like a warning cloaked in condescension. I looked at the message again, then saved it to multiple encrypted folders. I won't be quiet this time, I said. I called my mother. She picked up on the third ring. Did Dad sell a house using my name? My voice was flat. No space for preamble. Marin sighed. Sweetheart, why are you imagining these things? You've always been so sensitive. I bit my lip. This isn't a story I'm spinning. There's proof. You've been under stress, she said gently. Have you considered speaking to someone? A professional? There it was. The gentle blade of gaslight. Let's not upset your grandfather, all right? You know how fragile he's been lately. Don't, I snapped. Don't drag him into this. Her voice softened even more, dangerously sweet. Some truths hurt more than silence, Ira. She hung up. I stared at the wall, hands still gripping the phone. The voice that always soothed now made my skin crawl. Clairette pulled up old banking records, our shared account from when I was in school. We never closed it. She still had access. There, she pointed. A deposit. Labeled consulting reimbursement. The amount almost matched the listing I'd seen. Time-stamped the day after the house was removed. I blinked. They took money in my name. From my future. I dug through old emails. One from Grandpa. Years ago. A forwarded check sent to Callum for Ira's home setup. It wasn't just a promise. It had been real. The house was supposed to be mine. He meant it. And they sold it. Behind his back. Erased it from under me like it never existed. That night, the phone wouldn't stop ringing. Private number. 4 missed calls. On the 5th, I answered. Silence. Then a voice, barely above a whisper. You should have stayed quiet. My heart slammed against my chest. The line went dead. Clairette appeared from the kitchen. That's it. We're going public. I looked at her, calm now. No. We're going deeper. I want every file they buried. The office was empty when I arrived, save for Enya. She sat at my grandfather's desk, hands folded over a manila folder like it was a sleeping secret. The blinds were half closed, morning light slicing across the room like guilt. She looked up when I stepped in. He still thinks you live there, she whispered, almost apologetically. He asks about the curtains. Wants to know if they block the light too much. She slid the folder toward me. Inside were photocopies, handwritten notes from Grandpa, emails asking if I liked the neighborhood, if the fireplace worked, if I wanted him to send a handyman for the roof. His care was real. His belief that I was living in that house, heartbreakingly real. I stood still, the paper trembling in my hands. He really thought I was there, I murmured. Enya's voice cracked. I kept quiet because... Marin. She said if I ever said anything, my job, my immigration status, she trailed off. She didn't need to finish. I knew the language of threats disguised as warnings. I drove to Sarah's house that afternoon, an innocuous thank you card tucked under my coat like it was a warrant. She lived in a neighborhood where yards were manicured and secrets wore pearl earrings. She answered the door in slippers, surprised but polite. "I was just in the area," I said. "Thought I'd drop this off." She took the card, hesitated, then stepped aside. "Come in." Her home smelled of vanilla and old wood. Framed family photos. A life lived. She led me into a modest living room and sat without speaking for a while. "I wasn't supposed to let you see those papers," she finally said. "Your mother made it very clear." She disappeared into another room and returned with a document in a protective sleeve. "They forged your name. The sale was processed while you were in school. Abroad." The date on the e-signature hit me like a slap. Finals week in London. I had no idea they were writing my name into someone else's lie. "I was promised a promotion," Sarah said quietly. "It was never supposed to go this far." I looked at her. They used my name like a blank check. She didn't argue. Clairette reached out to LaRue Ash. He agreed to meet at a tucked-away cafe off Pearl Street, the kind where regulars don't ask questions and coffee comes in chipped mugs. He arrived wearing a beige coat and eyes that didn't rest. He nodded to both of us before sitting. "I used to work with Callum," he said. "Until it got ugly. It stopped being about protecting wealth. It became about erasing people." He placed his phone on the table and played a recording. Crackled but clear. Callum's voice, "She's better off where she is. She doesn't need that house." Then Grandpa's voice, tired, but resolute, "That house is her future." I closed my eyes. Something inside me tilted. I found the tax records online. The name tied to the house was L. Dane. I drove again to the house, parked down the street, waited. An hour passed. Then the front door opened. Lunitha. She froze when she saw me. I stepped forward. "You've been living here?" She closed the door behind her. "It wasn't supposed to be forever," she explained. "Callum offered it to her temporarily while I was overseas. A family favor. He said it was empty. That it'd go to you eventually." "It wasn't a loan," I said. "It was a lie." She didn't deny it. Just looked down at the snow. I didn't cry on the drive back. I didn't scream. I opened my laptop and found an old email thread, one I hadn't noticed before. Grandpa had written to ask how I liked the paint color. How the garden was doing. And someone had replied. In my name. "It's perfect. Thank you again." I slammed the laptop shut and sank to the floor. Clairette knelt beside me, arms around my shoulders. I felt myself unravel. "They wrote my life for me," I whispered. She held me tighter. "Then it's time to take the pen back." I shook my head. "No. I'll rewrite the whole damn book." That evening, there was a knock on my door. Enya stood in the hallway, breathless, holding a small sealed envelope. "He gave me this," she said. "Said to give it to you when the truth finally came out." I took it with trembling fingers. Inside was a small brass key. Attached to it, a faded tag with a number and the name of a local bank. The note read, "Not all doors open with permission. Some require courage." I stared at the key for a long time. The next step wasn't justice. It was revelation. The key was smaller than I expected, cold and unassuming. LaRue and I stood inside the sterile air of the bank, surrounded by the low hum of fluorescent lights. The manager led us into a private room, left us alone with the safety deposit box, and closed the door behind us with a soft click that sounded final. I slipped the key in. It turned smoothly. Inside was a single envelope, dated 3 years ago in my grandfather's steady handwriting. LaRue read silently over my shoulder as I unfolded the letter. "If you're reading this," Thatcher wrote, "then I have reason to believe my wishes have been tampered with. The property on Pacific Ridge belongs to Ira Veldon. This letter serves as confirmation of intent, should the transfer ever be questioned." Attached was a notarized addendum, signed and sealed, legally binding. Beneath it, another envelope. My grandfather's penmanship again, but the salutation was colder. "To Callum, if you read this, you've failed me." My pulse kicked. The words burned through the page, through the years. LaRue let out a slow breath. "With this," he said, "you can end them. Publicly, permanently." I folded the letters carefully. "Not yet," I said. "We do it on Christmas Eve. In his house. With everyone watching." Clairette's kitchen table had become a war room. Files, email printouts, and coffee cups covered every inch of it. She drew circles and arrows on a notepad like she was mapping a siege. "Let them feel safe," she said. "Complacency makes people sloppy. Smile. Be the daughter who came home." LaRue leaned back, rubbing his temples. "Mark will be there, he's still the estate attorney. Let him present the evidence. It'll have more weight if it doesn't come from you." I opened my laptop and typed a short, deceptively warm email. "Christmas Eve dinner at the estate, Grandpa wants the whole family together." Within minutes, Marin replied with a heart emoji and a line that felt rehearsed, "He'll be thrilled. We'll bring wine." I stared at the screen. They're walking into their own confession. That night, I called Mark. He was cautious at first, his loyalty conflicted. But when I mentioned the letters, his tone shifted. "If you need me to confirm their authenticity," he said, "I'll be there." Clairette smirked, tapping her pen. "Don't just bring the truth," she said. "Make them choke on it." LaRue met my eyes. "And if they deny everything?" I smiled, faint and cold. "Then I'll burn the bridge they're hiding under." The night before the dinner, Marin showed up at my apartment unannounced. She wore a beige coat, pearl earrings, the same calm armor she'd always used to disarm and discredit. "I was in the neighborhood," she said lightly, stepping inside without invitation. "Wanted to see how you were doing." She scanned the room. Her gaze lingered on a framed photo of me and Grandpa by the lake. Her smile faltered just slightly before returning. "You've been so emotional lately. Maybe talk to someone? It helps." There it was again, the velvet edge of her manipulation. The practiced maternal tone designed to make me doubt myself. I didn't rise to it. "I'm doing fine," I said. "Better, actually." She leaned closer. "Good. Because we all want you to be well." After she left, I found an envelope slid under the door. No sender. Inside, what looked like a medical report from my old college, claiming I'd been treated for a psychological breakdown. Clairette's fingers flew across her keyboard, checking metadata. "Forged," she confirmed. "Not even subtle." I exhaled, slow and steady. "They're already losing," I said. "That's why they're getting dirty." Christmas Eve came wrapped in snow and silence. I arrived at the estate early. The air smelled like pine and memory. Grandpa was in the dining room, setting the table himself, a habit he'd never abandoned. I joined him, folding napkins and aligning silverware while he hummed softly. He didn't ask questions, but I felt his eyes on me. "You've grown quiet," he said. "Just thinking about tonight," I replied. Enya entered, carrying a bottle of his favorite wine. She smiled at me as I replaced the plain napkins with new ones embroidered in gold thread, Velden. "Our name. Our reclamation." Grandpa watched the detail with a flicker of understanding. Then, from his coat pocket, he pulled an envelope and handed it to me. "The official deed," he said. "Signed yesterday. In case they try again." I stared at him, throat tight. He didn't know yet, not the whole truth. But he sensed the storm coming. A memory flashed, another Christmas, long ago. I'd been 12. Marin had told me to sit at the children's table because adults had things to discuss. I'd obeyed then. Not anymore. By late afternoon, the estate buzzed with soft voices and the sound of distant car tires crunching over snow. LaRue arrived first, his expression set. Mark followed, carrying a folder. He gave me a brief nod. Everything was ready. I stood by the foyer window, watching headlights approach. "Time to greet the ghosts of Christmas past," I whispered. The door opened. Callum and Marin stepped into the glow of candlelight and polished silver. The air was warm, deceptively gentle. Grandpa rose from his seat, steady despite his cane. "Let's all sit," he said kindly. "I have a question for Ira." Marin smiled, perfect and poised. Callum's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Glasses clinked. A pause. Grandpa turned to me, his voice clear. "Ira, how are you enjoying the house I bought for you?" Time stilled. Every sound folded inward. The fire crackled once, a single sharp pop. I looked at him, then at them. And I smiled, small, deliberate, deadly calm. The dining room shimmered in candlelight, glass and silver catching the flicker like small bursts of deceit. The air smelled faintly of rosemary and smoke. Conversation was polite, careful. Even the clinking of utensils sounded rehearsed. Thatcher raised his glass. "To family," he said warmly, unaware, or pretending to be, that the air beneath his words was charged. "To unity." I raised mine, eyes level with Marin's across the table. She smiled, graceful, the same performance she'd given my whole life. Callum's hand rested on the table beside hers, steady, calculating. "Wine, sweetheart?" Marin asked, pouring from the decanter before I could answer. The red shimmered like something too alive. I took the glass but didn't drink. My grandfather's next words cut through the hum. "Ira," he said. "How do you like the house I bought for you?" A fork slipped from Callum's fingers, clinking against the china. The room went still. Marin froze mid-breath. I set down the glass. "Maybe," I said quietly, "you should ask them that." The envelope was plain, unassuming, yet it landed on the table like a grenade. I pushed it toward Thatcher. He opened it with careful fingers. The papers inside reflected in his glasses, contracts, forged deeds, emails, his own signature copied like a theft of his hand. "What is this?" he whispered. "Evidence," LaRue said. "Verified through the state registrar." The silence cracked open. Callum cleared his throat, the old authority creeping in. "There's a misunderstanding," he said smoothly. "It was only for safekeeping." "Then why," I asked, voice steady, "was the deed rewritten under Lenitha's name?" Marin's smile trembled, her jaw tightening. That was temporary. Legal logistics. Thatcher's hand trembled against the papers. My name, he said softly. You used my name. The chandelier hummed above us. No one breathed. Callum shifted tone. The charm returned, cold and polished. Ira's been under a great deal of stress lately, he said. You know how imaginative she can be. Marin nodded, her performance flawless. She's always struggled with emotional instability. We've tried to help her, but... She slid a document across the table. The forged medical report. Thatcher's eyes hardened. Are you accusing her of being insane? I picked up the paper, tore it clean in half, the rip echoing through the room. You forged this too. Mark, the estate attorney, leaned forward. Mr. Dane, your claims contradict the official state property logs. There's no ambiguity here. Callum turned on him, eyes sharp. You were always too soft, Mark. You never understood the weight of family obligation. Thatcher spoke then, voice low and final. I trusted you with my name. You sold my trust for profit. No one dared move. You asked if I liked the house, I said, turning to my grandfather. I never got to live in it. I reached into my coat pocket and placed a small recorder on the table. One click. The sound of Callum's voice filled the room, disembodied and smug. She's better off where she is, he said. She doesn't need that house. Then Grandpa's own voice, weary but resolute. That house is her future. The words collided in the air, truth against betrayal. Thatcher's hand slammed down on the table. Plates jumped. Glasses trembled. Enough. He turned to Mark. Prepare the documents. Effective immediately, I revoke any inheritance to Callum and Marin Dane. All estate rights revert to Ira Veldon. No one spoke. The air felt alive, electric. Even the fire seemed to listen. Marin's composure cracked first. She began to cry, loud, desperate, rehearsed. You're destroying our family. Thatcher didn't flinch. No. You did that years ago. Soren stood, voice shaking. Dad didn't mean. Sit down, Thatcher snapped. You've done enough damage defending him. Callum lunged across the table, trying to grab the documents, but LaRue caught his wrist midair. Touch it, he said evenly, and I'll have you arrested before dessert. Wine spilled. It spread across the tablecloth, blooming crimson over white linen. The smell filled the room, metallic, sweet, final. Thatcher pointed at Callum and Marin. From this day forward, you don't speak for her again. Marin's voice turned to a hiss. You'll regret this. Thatcher's eyes met hers, steady as steel. I already regret trusting you. The room emptied slowly. No one looked at anyone else. Thatcher stood by the fireplace, the forged contracts in his hand. He struck a match and held it to the edge of the paper. Let the truth burn what's false, he said. The flames caught fast, curling the signatures, blackening the names. I watched until they were ash. Outside, the snow had started again, soft, relentless. From the hall, faint but clear, Marin's voice drifted back through the open door. It's not over, Ira. I looked into the firelight and didn't blink. No, I whispered. It's only beginning. The morning after the storm was unnaturally quiet. The house no longer hummed with whispers or footsteps, only the steady tick of the old grandfather clock filled the silence. Snow had blanketed the grounds overnight, soft and perfect, as if trying to erase everything that had been said the night before. I woke up in one of the guest rooms at the Veldon estate. For a moment, I didn't move. My body felt heavy, my mind still replaying the dinner, the slamming hand, the tearing paper, the crack in my mother's voice. When I finally rose and drew back the curtains, the world outside was clean, still, forgiving. Callum's car was gone. So was Marin's. No note. No goodbye. I found my grandfather in the study, seated near the window, the morning light turning his silver hair almost white. He looked up when I entered and held out an envelope. "It's done," he said simply. Inside was the final deed, the North Boulder house, legally and irrevocably mine. His signature, solid and clear. I sat down, the weight of it pressing into my palms. "So that's it?" I asked. "That's it," he said. "They can't touch it now." Outside, a crow called once before flying off into the white sky. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Have you ever waited for someone else to give you permission to exist? This was mine. Freedom didn't feel loud. It felt like silence that finally made sense. By mid-morning, the sun broke through the clouds, scattering light across the snow. I drove north, following the winding road that led to Pacific Ridge. The frost sparkled on tree branches like glass dust. When I reached the house, it looked smaller than I remembered from that first time, no longer the fortress of lies it once was. I parked, stepped out, and stared at the front door. The silver key felt cold in my hand. I turned it in the lock. The click was soft but final. Inside, the air smelled faintly of cedar and something new, hope, maybe. The rooms were still. But on the entryway table sat a cardboard box labeled Veldon, Welcome. I opened it carefully. Inside were cream-colored curtains, a small woven mat that read home, and a note written in Thatcher's neat, deliberate script, "You belong here." For a long time, I didn't move. Then I whispered, "This is my place now." What would it feel like to walk into a house that was promised, stolen, and now reclaimed? Like stepping into a version of yourself that finally remembered who she was. A folded letter lay on the foyer floor, sealed in familiar handwriting. Marin's. My instinct was to toss it into the nearest drawer, or maybe the fire, but something stopped me. I broke the seal. Her words were uneven, not her usual polished tone. She wrote that she was sorry. That she'd been trapped in Callum's empire for years, that she'd tried to keep me out of it, but fear had made her complicit. "I thought control was protection," she said. "But I see now it was a prison." My hands shook, but not from anger this time. I didn't forgive her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But there was something in the way she admitted fear, raw, human, small, that I recognized. I folded the letter and slid it into a drawer. Not to honor it. To remember it. Forgiveness isn't weakness. It's wisdom. Have you ever received an apology you weren't sure you wanted? Sometimes it's not for peace, it's just proof that they finally saw you. Later that evening, I stood in front of the fireplace with Thatcher. Together, we fed the remnants of the forged contracts into the flames. The paper curled, the names Dane, Sale, forgery disappearing one by one. "Let this fire burn what we cannot live under," he said quietly. The warmth spread through the room, not from the fire, but from something deeper, release. On the mantel, I placed a small candle, white wax in a glass holder. I'd written in black marker, Ira Veldon, homeowner. For the first time, the word didn't feel borrowed. I called Clairette. "We're moving forward," I told her. We're starting with the trust fund I never got. She laughed, proud. Took you long enough, girl. LaRue joined the call halfway through. Just make sure they never rebuild that empire, he said. Don't worry, I replied. I'm changing the blueprint. Sometimes you change your address to change your story. And sometimes, you change your name by simply living like it's already yours. The next morning, the sky was a pale blue sheet over the snowy hills. I walked the garden path with Grandpa, the air crisp and still. I've been thinking, he said. We should start a scholarship fund. In your name. For girls who were told they didn't belong. I stopped walking. I wanted a house, I said softly. Now I want a purpose. He smiled. You already have one. We stood there in silence, watching the windows of the house glow gold in the sunrise. At the edge of the property, I saw faint tire tracks fading into the snow, the Dane's final trace. Gone. You don't rebuild your life by going back. You rebuild by stepping through the door. By twilight, I stood at the front step again, the key resting in my palm. It glinted in the fading light. This key, I whispered, is not a gift. It's a promise kept. A soft knock startled me. When I opened the door, Clairette was standing there, cheeks pink from the cold, a determined smile on her face. It's time, she said. I nodded, stepped inside, and closed the door behind us. The house was warm now, alive. If you had one key to your future, what would you unlock?